everybody. Welcome to this brief show. We're live. As Father Martin and I will go through the Ember Days. Happy Ember Wednesday, everybody. Father, how are you?
Doing well, Alberto. How are you?
Very well, very happy. Now, before we start getting any hate, if anything in this live stream goes wrong, this is a test run. We mentioned, if you've been watching our introduction to the Devout Life series, you know that we are going to be going through this book, Knowing the Law of God, in a little bit of a different format than we have been going through Introduction to the Devout Life. One of the differences will be that this new show will be live. So Father Martin and I were having a discussion of ideas, and then we said, well, we don't want to go for our first live stream as the show starts. So we said, well, let's do a couple of live streams before this one to test out the waters and then see how it goes. So if anything goes wrong, this is a practice, but we're getting a little bit out of it at least.
Exactly. And when we practice also talking to you guys too, because we see that, with the software and everything else, that one of the reasons to go live, especially with our next series, is that you guys can actually talk to us and chat with us as well as we're giving commentary on this new book, precisely so you can ask questions, participate in the conversation. And obviously that means both us giving commentary, concentrating on the commentary, then also concentrating on the comment section of our live stream, and then pressing all these buttons. They try to make the software intuitive, but sometimes it can get a little bit too much to handle. So we wanted to make sure to have a couple test runs before we get into the series, and so that's why we're with you guys all today.
So our main source for this show will be this little book right here, which it's a tome of the liturgical year by Dom Gueranger, volume 5 on Lent. Now, if you are not familiar with what the liturgical year is it's how many tomes, how many volumes are in it, Father? Remind me.
Something like 15 volumes.
15 volumes of this going through every single day of the liturgical year. It's a wonderful, wonderful resource that all trats would love to be able to reference and to go check it out. A great way to catechize our families also on the liturgical year. So that's what we're using as a little bit of a resource here, even though there's really not a lot about the Ember Days, surprisingly so, in this volume. But anyway, yeah, so today's Ember Wednesday, and we start out the Ember Days for Lent. So we have 4 sets of Ember Days. Yes, 4 sets of Ember Days throughout the liturgical year. The first one would be those of Advent, which come after the Feast of St. Lucy. The second ones are the first week of Lent, so this one. The third one are during the time after Pentecost. And then the fourth set of Ember Days, and the last one for the liturgical year, happen traditionally after the exaltation of the Holy Cross in September. They have changed a little bit throughout the years, right, Father?
Correct. So, when they first started, the Ember Days really just began in spring and summer because they had to do with the harvest. There was 3 days of fasting. A set is 3, so Wednesday, Friday, and a Saturday. And they began because Catholics wanted to pray and to fast, to petition God for a good harvest, for good food. And so originally they were just in spring and then summer. But then one of the Pope Gregories began to fix these sets into the first week after Ash Wednesday, so the first week in Lent, and then also during the week after of Pentecost week. So we're wearing red for those days, but they're of a penitential nature, precisely to beseech God for a good harvest. And then, of course, additionally, because we're petitioning God for a good harvest, our Lord said in the Gospel, the harvest is plenty, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray God to give us laborers for the harvest. And so the Church then additionally added on a spiritual meaning to the Ember Days. So not just to pray for a good harvest, but also to pray for spiritual laborers for the spiritual harvest.
There we go. So the spiritual labor there, if you haven't caught on, that Father is talking about, is to pray for priests that they may do this work. Even though it's sort of like in the year 2025, Father, it's like we don't need priests anymore. We just have the YouTube stars.
No, exactly. Yeah, we just need priests just to give us the sacraments, but the truth and everything else we'll just trust like lay superstars.
Now, in contrast with the rest of the Ember Days for the liturgical year. The Ember Days during Lent have sort of a double meaning that Dom Gueranger talks about. He says we have the Ember Days, and then we also have the fast of Lent. So not fasting and not abstaining, if we are capable and of age and all of the other requirements, would constitute sort of a double violation, because it's a violation of the Ember Wednesday, Ember Friday, or Ember Saturday, and of the Lenten fast.
Yeah, you end up getting hit with two fines, so to speak.
Yes, it says know that they commit a twofold sin. So that this is actually the language that he uses. And as Father Martin was referencing, that up to the 11th century, the Ember Days of spring were kept in the first week of March. So the times have been shifting a little bit. And of course, some years that will coincide depending on the date of Easter for that specific year.
Right.
And then before this reform, they were in the second week of June, but then it was Pope St. Gregory the Seventh who fixed them as we now have them. Father, what would be now one thing that I will mention is that if you are one of those that, if you're a layman and attend daily mass, you will sort of see a lot of similarities between the usual like Lenten weekday mass and an regular Ember Day mass. Both are wearing purple or violet vestments. However, they sort of, as you were mentioning also, Father, they feel sort of out of place when they are done. Like, for example, they're during Advent, they also fit within the season of Advent, but it feels a little bit odd for some people to have the Ember Days sometimes that are not strictly penitential, such as during Pentecost. It's like, well, we just had Lent.
Right.
But that's
we should be celebrating, supposedly.
It's always a discussion with those that are not very familiar as far as when we hit a Friday, as you all know. So every Friday of the year, traditionally Catholics abstain from meat. Mm-hmm. So when Lent starts, in the Novus Ordo, it's like, hey, Lent started, so everybody starts rolling out their fish specials and so on and so forth, because most people nowadays only try to abstain from some meats on the Fridays during Lent. But when we start Lent for traditionalists, it's like that's the same. But what changes is the daily fasting. So I'm just pretty much ranting. But do you agree with this, Father? That in modern days people cannot seem to be able to reconcile, like whenever there's like, oh, the feast of Saint Joseph is on a Friday, we don't have to eat meat, but people can't reconcile having a feast with doing penance.
Yeah, and I don't know, it's definitely a recent phenomenon, because also during Eastertide, the week preceding the Feast of the Ascension Thursday, which and traditionally always falls on a Thursday. Now in the Novus Ordo, they have Ascension Thursday on Sunday. But we had the three rogation days, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, the rogation days. And those days also historically come from the fact that in the Middle Ages, like in the 500s or 600s, in the southern part of France, there was a lot of the Christians ended up being conquered by some barbarian tribe or whatever, and there was a lot of social calamities going on, that the church decided to do 3 days of penance during this time, and it was fixed to the three days before Ascension Thursday. And those 3 days also, I mean, we're still in Eastertide. There's fasting and abstinence traditionally, and then as well as processions, begging God to deliver them from these sorts of evils. And so traditionally there was a common understanding between fasting, abstaining, and also celebration. In the East, not so much. And this is one of the reasons why the Eastern rites start their Great Lent, their Great Fast, even several weeks before we do in the West, is precisely because not only could they not fast on Sundays, but they also refused to fast on Saturdays. And so they needed to add days, since they only have 5 days in the week. In order to get to 40, they needed to start a lot earlier than we did. But in the West, we do have a tradition where we can do both and, not either or, but both fast, abstain, but also feast.
Father, I want to ask you about the themes of the Divine Office as we start at Lent. But before we do that, let's go to a quick break.
You're listening to a production by Restless Heart Media. Be sure to hit like, subscribe, and the little bell to be notified of the latest content made to inspire and nourish your growth in the interior life. Restless Heart Media. You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you. See, here I thought you were going to hit the button.
What's that?
Here I thought you were going to hit the button.
Oh, see, this is exactly why we're doing this. I didn't even know that I had a button. I didn't even know that I had a button.
Over on your right hand side, isn't it? On your screen.
I don't even know what I'm looking at. But so, Father, in the Mass for Ember Wednesday, now here's going to be one of the small differences that you will notice in the Mass. So usually in most daily Masses we have, and also on Sunday Masses, we have an epistle and then a gospel. Mm-hmm. On Ember Days, we have multiple epistles. So today, Ember Wednesday, we have 2 epistles. The first one talks about Moses, the second one about Elijah. So before we end the show, can you tell us a little bit about what the theme that the church touches on in the Divine Office is as we start at Lent?
Well, to be honest, this is also funny about the Divine Office regarding Ember Days is that, and also I guess even the Mass today, for instance, today's also the feast of St. Gregory I. And so the feast of St. Gregory I trumps the Ember Day liturgically. So in the Divine Office, I did the Divine Office for the feast of St. Gregory. And then for Mass today, the feast of St. Gregory. But at least in pre-55, I forget my 62 rubrics, guys. I'm sorry. It's been so many years since I've done them. But in the pre-55, you commemorate the Ember Day. So actually, this is one of the things that actually changed between the pre-55 and 1962, is that in pre-55, for instance, today, Ember Day, but then also even during the ferias in Lent, whenever there was a saint that fell in Lent, you would do the Feast of the Saint and then commemorate the Lenten Feria. The Lenten Feria, the Lenten weekday, it's different than Advent in the sense that if there was a weekday without a saint in Advent, you would say the Mass of the preceding Sunday, or you could do a votive Mass. But in Lent, all the weekdays have an actual Mass for them. All the weekdays have an actual Mass for them. So instead of doing the Mass from the preceding Sunday, you do that actual day. And so what this results in is whenever there's a feast day of a saint, you actually commemorate the Lenten Feria weekday. And this is cool because one thing that's, again, unique to the pre-55 is that instead of the last gospel being the prologue of John, like at the very end of Mass, you actually do what's called a proper last gospel, the gospel from the Feria of Lent, the weekday of Lent. And so you say that, like today, I said this at the Mass of Pope St. Gregory I, which was a proper Mass, and then I had a second collect, I had a second secret, second post-communion prayer, and then instead of the prologue of John at the very end, I said the gospel reading for today, Quarto de Tempora of the Ember Day. So a lot of little intricate things going on in the liturgy these days, it's pretty interesting, pretty fun. It breaks from routine a little bit, and I like it.
Yes, Lent is definitely a time of a lot of proper last gospels. So if you'll notice if you attend the pre-55 liturgy that the server changes the missal toward the end of Mass. That's because there's going to be a proper last gospel. And so if you're wondering, when's the genuflection coming, or the kneeling down, or all that stuff during the last gospel, it's not going to come, because number one, if you're listening, you will know. But now, yes, Mark, I try to fast on Fridays. Good for the body and the soul. Painful at times. Yes, definitely. Definitely. And see, in our series about St. Francis de Sales, Father, we were talking about how, like, the proper way of conceptualizing fasting, and I think that applies a lot during Lent. Mm-hmm. Because I think that if we, not to get off track, but if we immediately start going like, I'm going to fast because we need a better political order or whatever, then we have enough to worry about within ourselves to be necessarily be concerned about the political order when we can't even reform ourselves. But anyway, exactly. not to get off track. The one way that I've had this sort of explained, Father, is that so the church allows, for example, the Feast of St. Gregory, the Mass of the Feast of St. Gregory, to be offered, but then it's almost as if at the end of Mass, the church brings us back to Lent by using a proper last gospel.
Absolutely. And
And this proper last gospel is, just to be clear, is going to be the last gospel for the specific mass for that day of Lent. So every, as Father mentioned, Monday of the first week, Tuesday of the first week, and so on and so forth, every day has a mass. So it's not, there's not like a proper last gospel for Lent. It's a proper last gospel for that specific day that will be changing and be different depending on the mass that is offered. Of course, if the mass for that specific day of Lent is offered, then there's no proper last gospel. It's the last gospel as always. So it can get a little confusing there, Father.
right. And one thing that is different, also based on the Ember Days, and also the difference between pre-55 and the 1962, is the Saturday Ember Day. In that the Saturday Ember Day has 5 epistles, so it's nice and long. Pre-55, plan on getting there early. However, in the 1962, which of course was helped being rewritten by Annibale Bonini, who wrote the Novus Ordo, those 5 epistles, there's actually a forma brevior of the Saturday Mass. So instead of 5 readings, there's 3 readings. I think 3 readings or 2 readings. I forget. Anyways, they give you an option to cut it short because 5 readings is just too long these days. It's just too long.
Now, the irony, Father, is that if you count the time, it's going to be like 3 more minutes at most, or something like that. Like, sure, it is a little bit longer, but it's like when during Lent, we're all excited, like, oh, mass is going to be shorter because there's not a chanted Gloria, but then the tract is super long.
Oh yeah.
So we don't really end up saving, like this past Sunday, the tract for the first Sunday of Lent is so long that there's no chanted Gloria or Alleluia, but we have a long tract. So if you're
wait, what'd you say? What'd you say? You said the A word.
I said Alleluia. So there's no Alleluia, but we haven't had an Alleluia, Father, ever since
we buried it.
ever since Septuagesima Sunday.
Yeah.
But in the Novus Ordo, in the new calendar, they would have had Alleluia all the way up to Ash Wednesday, and then people miss Ash Wednesday because they didn't even know that the start of Lent was coming.
Well, actually, isn't that the only like holy day of obligation in the Novus Ordo, or at least that's what the lay people think, right?
Yes, exactly. It almost, it's what's the, like, if there was a, churches should have like a little, Father, churches should have some way to like tap your phone to donate money, like $5 per ashes, and then have a revolving door, because that's how it is. Like, oh, we're offering ashes all day, pretty much. You go in the middle of the day, and people are coming in and out as if it was I don't even know. Like, that's why sort of the drive-through ashes, Father, sort of is like the logical conclusion of that. That's why you have to get out of your car.
Exactly.
But anyway, is there anything else? We're going on about 20 minutes of the live stream. We started not wanting to go super long, but also just wanted to have a good time and practice a little bit and see. I didn't even know there was a button for me to take us to the break. But is there anything else that we should talk about, Father, before we wrap it up today?
I think so that the few people that we have here can plan on it. I think we're actually, what time are we planning on actually doing our live stream when we get things off the ground and running?
It's going to be
Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern, I believe.
That's correct.
Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. So mark your calendars. Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central. We'll be talking about Knowing the Love of God by Father Gueranger Lagrange. Very deep, profound spiritual book. Pretty excited to already get this going. However, we did need to do some practice runs, as we found out today.
There we go. So I think, do we have another practice run set up? Practice run, I mean, just sort of a live stream plan for next Tuesday at the same time, Father?
Sure, but what are we going to have it about?
I don't know. We'll have to plan about something, but it's really not that difficult to go about 20 minutes as we're going on right now. And it helps because maybe next week I'll find the button to plug the commercial in. But anyway, thank you, Father. Thank you guys for watching, that may be watching right now live, or that may be watching in the future. Hopefully we can pick up a little bit of viewership and have a fun live chat as the series actually starts. So I think all of this will be helpful. And if we come up with a topic, see you next week at the same time. And if we don't, then we'll see you for our actual series over here in a couple of weeks, Knowing the Love of God by Father Gueranger Lagrange. It'll be a little bit of a different format than Introduction to About Life. It'll be much less just reading straight up from the book. It'll be more sort of having a more active participation discussion about the chapters in the book, and Father will give us a little bit of a meditation as we go through. So it'll be different formats, but we'll have some fun and it'll be fruitful for everybody.
Looking forward to seeing everybody in the live chat. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching another video on Restless Heart Media. You can take part in providing more spiritually nourishing content by supporting our monastery. Visit www.oblatesofstaugustine.org/giving. God bless.